1. Looks are not the most important factor for men's dating success unless dating success only involves hookups. 2. Neither gender necessarily cares more about looks than the other, albeit there is slight variation between sample groups. 3. Women tend to be more selective about choosing a partner because they bear the responsibility of pregnancy. 4. Men tend to be less selective when choosing a partner because pregnancy does not pose a risk to them. 5. There are more anonymous and faceless methods of dating than ever before because of the internet. 6. Since men tend to be less selective, women have more options. 7. Dating apps are rigged in favor of attractive men. However, this does not guarantee dating success, as abundance in matches does not translate to abundance in dates. 8. Since online dating favors attractive men, most average-looking men will not get many matches on online dating. Average men tend not to optimize their profiles for the app that they're using, which can harm their elo. Note, women are not scraps. Only incels like to compare women with food. This is because most incels have a perverted sense of entitlement for women. 9. Because sub-5 men, as Waffles would put it, tend not to do well on dating apps, he has concluded that they cannot get matches in real life. This is quite an absurd conclusion to make, as any trip to a busy grocery store on a weekend will indicate otherwise. 10. The top 10% of men receive 58% of likes on Hinge. Hinge is only one app of many designed for the couple-seeking demographic on online dating, which is a different demographic as to what Grindr, Tinder, and Bumble would be aiming at. How can one app alone represent the entirety of online dating if it has a niche? Besides that, Hinge's like system is different to Tinder's or Bumble's, as it allows you to like certain elements of a profile, such as a catchphrase or a voice sample, not necessarily a picture. Thus, we can conclude that Hinge's findings of the top 10% of men does not necessarily translate to the top 10% of men being the most attractive men. 11. There is no data that indicates the top 80% of matches go to the top 20% of men. This statistic is wrongfully cited from a 2009 OkCupid article. The stat isn't explicitly stated, but rather is derived from this particular graph that you see before you. As you can see, most men were ranked by women to be less attractive than average. However, women also indicated that they were still willing to talk to men who they considered to be less attractive than average. 12. The data that indicates 95% of likes go to the top 50% of men is rather silly. The stat is derived from a Medium article written by an explicitly black-pilled author. The author got his statistics through chad fishing, which is an incel term for catfishing by pretending to be a handsome man, or a man they would refer to as a chad. On top of this, he does not state what he asked the 27 college students that he used to surmise the chart you see on the right, aside from leaving all the spelling and grammatical errors that you see on the left in the single paragraph that he invites you to ignore just so you can go straight to the charts. Hardly the most trustworthy source of information, if you ask me. 13. This point shows us how seriously we should take Waffles from now on. Not only does he contradict his point from 4 slides ago, from belief 9, but he also derives this statistic by inverting the previous one, which, as we've already discussed, is deeply flawed. Obviously, a single BlackPill article is enough to convince this man. 14. Looks are subjective. Anyone claiming that looks can be objectively measured have a very high opinion of themselves. 15. In the 21st century, women have the option of fulfilling a provider role. Money is not just for men anymore. Women looking for men who can provide for them will still value money, and vice versa. Women who want to provide or be in independent relationships will still consider their partner's own dependence or independence. Saying money means nothing because most women can now earn it for themselves is delusional. 16. Relationships built on money are doomed to failure. I agree with Wheat Waffles on this one. 17. 17 is just a repetition of 16. 18. 18 is just a repetition of 16. 19. 19 is a very unusual and arbitrary conclusion to draw from 16. 20. Confidence counts for everything you do. True confidence is not a vice, it's a virtue. It's derived from humility, not pride. It allows you to deviate from online dating into a larger pool of potential partners. Overconfidence will limit your options, and underconfidence will also limit your options. Shyness, or timidity, will severely limit your options. Pride is the cause of all of this, and the only way to overcome it is to embrace humility. Humility will show you what you can do and what you cannot do, and allow you to build on a steady foundation of truthfulness. 21. Arrogance is pride in contempt of others. Looks are utterly irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you're handsome or if you're ugly. Arrogance is hideous. 22. Your upbringing as a youth determines your self-esteem. Ultimately, parents are indeed responsible for developing their child's self-esteem, and since the child looks different every year, linking looks with self-esteem is not a good idea. Most parents will develop a child's ability instead, like starting a sport or playing an instrument. And besides all this, children and teenagers will always find a reason to bully each other. Looks are not relevant in this situation. It's only one factor of many. 23. Attractive youths do indeed draw more attention to their positive traits. This is known as the halo effect and will last into adulthood. 24. Confidence is decided by ability, not appearance, as I have said before. On the screen before you, some of you may recognize these men. They are some of the best at what they do, and this is in spite of how they look. 25. This man can find confidence in his ability as a healthcare professional. The career path he has chosen is extremely competitive and takes quite a lot of competence to breach. This means that he has quite a lot of academic and practical ability alongside his colleague. Granted, he does not look confident in his picture. However, we are also assuming that he is envious of his colleague because of his stature, which is an unfair assumption to make given that the man cannot talk for himself. 26. This man is a professional model and he can find confidence in his ability and humility that he is exhibiting before us. How many of you will go in front of a camera with crooked teeth and have it explicitly used as a stock image to show what teeth should not look like? That takes a lot of humility and quite a lot of courage. So I think it's safe to say that this man is already confident. 27. This man can find confidence in improving what he can change. Granted, acne scars suck, but you can hide them if you're a man. How? By growing a beard. Not that you should have to. You can still be confident with acne scars after all, because they are a physical reminder of our faults, and reminding ourselves of our faults is a step towards humility. 28. Status is a much greater decider for dating success than looks ever will be. No leader in history has ever struggled to find a partner, man or woman, unless they have chosen to be celibate. Now, dear viewer, if you do happen to know a leader that struggled with this, please let me know because I'd love to read more about them. 29. Status is not decided by looks alone in the modern world, even if you're in the limelight. 30. The stat 58% of Fortune 500 CEOs are over 6 foot comes from a book by Malcolm Gladwell written in 2005. His sample size for this statistic was slightly under half of all the CEOs from the Fortune 500, so less than 250. The USA today has approximately 200,000 CEOs. This means that for every CEO he measured, they represent roughly 800 CEOs. Is it right to claim that the most exceptional CEOs represent the average. 31. Status will always matter to a significant degree between the ages of 18 and 59 and beyond. And picture this, if you're in college and you have a car, you have more status than a college student without a car. Why? Because you've proven that you have the resources to keep a car and the ability to drive it, which is a skill not everyone has when they're in college. This only compounds in later life when you can prove that you have more resources than your peers. So status is always a significant factor. 32. Usually university students aged 18 to 25 do not want to settle down, and when they eventually do, in their 30s or late 20s, they want to do it with a partner they know will be there in another 20 years' time. If an 18-year-old gets with a 50-year-old, there's no guarantee that they'll still be around in 20 years' time. There's certainly no guarantee that they'll still be healthy in 20 years' time, and there's no guarantee that they're able to have kids with them in 20 years' time. 33. Quantifying a minimum looks threshold is arbitrary at best. 34. As I said before, the halo effect is very real, and it goes both ways. Being considered attractive will let you get away with more, regardless of your gender. 35. It is better to be confident and ugly than shy and handsome. The former will fail more often, but have a greater exposure to more potential matches, increasing their chances of having a satisfying relationship. The latter will fail less often, but pursue less partners, decreasing the chances of them finding a satisfying relationship. 36. Being antisocial does not mean being introverted. It's a predictor for criminality in later life. It's determined by IQ, environment, and reading ability, and has no correlation with appearance whatsoever. 37. Awkward is awkward regardless of looks. 38. Creepy is creepy regardless of looks. 39. People might laugh at your jokes if they're attracted to you. If you're not especially funny but are still getting laughs from someone, then that person is signaling attraction to you because it is an easy and risk-free way of doing so. 40. Most professional comedians are not very attractive men. 41. Intelligence is a synonym of smart. Smart also means well presented. This would suggest people who are both attractive and intelligent can dress up and conduct themselves if we're going to ignore the nuance in context. If this was not the intended meaning, then the claim of being, quote, intelligent means you're smart, unquote, is redundant. 42. This is a very silly slide. If it is suggesting that well presented is the intended meaning for smart, ugly people can still be well presented, as we can see. They can certainly still be smart and intelligent. 43. Good looks can isolate. 44. You can have friends and still be a loser. 45. Grooming is about respect for yourself and for others. It improves your confidence, health, intimacy, job prospects, looks, and social life. There's absolutely no good reason not to groom yourself. Beliefs 46 and 47 are laughable conclusions drawn from 45. 48 is a laughable conclusion drawn from 46. 49. Going to the gym is a well-advised lifestyle choice. 50. Going to the gym is never regarded as overcompensating. 51. Belief 51 can only be concluded by the terminally online. 52. This claim was made based on a photo of a man at the start of his fitness journey. 53. You can look good with a higher body fat percentage and look unattractive if you are too lean. 55. A boyfriend is an intimate partner, a friend is not. Men can just be friends with women even if they are not physically attracted to them, because Not every man is attracted to every woman. 56. Being anti-mainstream is not enough to validate an opinion. It doesn't lend you credibility to be a predictable contrarian. Most relevant advice is simple in nature, however, you must translate advice to suit your own situation. It's not designed for comfort, it's designed to substitute for counsel that you may not already have. Seeking advice in echo chambers or through ideology is ill-advised. 57. Using just do X is indeed a poor way to elicit advice, but what Wheat Waffles fails to mention is that you triangulate such advice so you can synthesize advice with more meaning. 58. This one's quite important. Acting and failing is better than dismissal. Dismissal leads to inaction leads to isolation, and isolation ultimately will lead to misanthropy. Misanthropy is always self-destructive, and you want to avoid it at all costs. 59. These graphs were taken from a Washington Post article indicating that young people between the ages of 18 and 29 were having less sex in America than the 30-plus demographic. The article primarily attributes this to most young people still living at home and refusing to marry, meaning that they're not living with an intimate partner, unlike the 30-plus demographic. Wheat Waffles presented you with the graph on the right, but drew his own conclusions on the data presented. He was too lazy to admit the source, which is why I've linked it in the description below. 60. The skulls used to illustrate bone structure and emphasize its importance are drastically different. The skull on the left belonged to a 5-year-old child, and the skull on the right belonged to an adult Asian male. The adult Asian male skull looks different to the 5-year-old's because it had hormonal influence during puberty. We cannot determine the gender of the 5-year-olds because it never reached that point. 61. The study that determined the hierarchy of facial looks says a bit more than what's been represented by Wheat Waffles. Here we find the charts that are relevant in this study, which I've linked in the description down below. On the left, it shows women's prioritization over looks and personality and other factors, and on the right, we see the hierarchy of looks. Granted, if looks were number one, then this hierarchy would be a lot more important, but since personality trumps it by about 20%, it diminishes the importance of the hierarchy on the right. 62. Belief 62 invites arbitrary conclusions to be drawn from 14. 63. Surgery perpetuates body dysmorphia and is never a cure. 64. Height is indeed an attractive trait and is correlated with interpersonal dominance. Historically, Edward Longshanks got his name from his overbearing height of 6'2", when the average height for his time was roughly 5'6". The fact that this was important enough for people 700 years ago to notice, associate, and record is a solid testament to the impact of height. 65. However, an ideal height is subjective and is relative between regions. For example, being 6 foot in Bosnia and Herzegovina is considered slightly below average for men. In Turkey, it's considered tall, and in Guatemala, it is considered exceedingly tall. Beliefs 66 and 67 are arbitrary conclusions drawn from 65. 68. Gigantism is a hormonal disorder that causes early death. Being excessively tall relative to the global average can be quite a burden. Again, we find insults hurled at another's appearance using colloquial speech in what's supposed to be an objective list of beliefs in Wheat Waffles' video. 69. There are more shortcomings being over 6'4" than being 5'10". For example, you would attract more superficial partners, clothing options are substantially limited, muscle growth is more difficult, you have more health risks and issues, and physical activities like dancing are a lot more difficult to coordinate. 70. Balding will only diminish a man's confidence if he allows it. The correlation between men showing signs of balding by 35 and men having more sex by 35 is that the vast majority of men are affected by it in the USA. 71. Belief 71 is a fabrication. The 5% stat was made up. 72. The cure for balding is baldness. Balding affects most Western men by the age of 35. If it happens sooner, you will look closer to that age. Growing a full beard and grey hairs has about the same effect. However, stating that balding adds 10 years is a belief, not a rule, as there is no scientific study that purports that 10 years is the exact amount balding will add. It is subjective. How you present yourself can drastically affect how old you look. Take Roy Keane, for example. How old do you think he is in these photos? Take a moment to deliberate and leave what you thought down below. Did you get it right? 73. Men only reach peak physical attractiveness in their 20s. The vast majority of the time, it is quite diverse when a man truly peaks in attractiveness. As we can see, it can be in their late 20s, mid-30s, or late 40s. 74. The reason why men below 21 years old are unattractive is because A, they are not fully developed, as Waffles says, and B, perhaps more importantly, they have no resources that can truly compete with older men. 75. Most age-related flaws can be remedied through lifestyle. Alcohol, smoking, and a chronic lack of sleep can accelerate aging quite drastically. 76. For men, the drop in looks is not relevant in the dating market when compared with women, as men peak later on. In this situation, in some major US cities, women are said to peak at 18, whilst men are said to peak at roughly 50. 77. Waffles gives 3 different statistics as to when women peak in physical attractiveness. Is it 20 to 24, 18 to 24, or 20 to 28? 2 of them are shown, and 1 of them is spoken. None of them are clear. 78. Fertility windows are not congruent with apparent age. It is a term found when referencing the menstrual cycle. Women are fertile once they start having their period, until they reach menopause in their late 30s or early 40s. 79. Ideals surrounding the length of men's genitalia have changed quite drastically over time. In ancient Greece, having a small member was seen as virtuous, whereas having an unfortunately large penis, or getting erections in public, was seen as shameful. So long as your member is not deformed and can perform its proper function, your partner won't care how long it is. 80. Belief 80 is an arbitrary conclusion drawn from 79, as is 81. 82. The data behind this chart is niche and outdated. It comes from a 2010 survey of OkCupid users in the USA and is not indicative of global standards. Notice how Waffles' arrow on the left conveniently blocks a contradictory statistic which I have shown on the right. 83. In the 21st century, class does not equate to ethnicity. 84. The truth is, every woman has their own opinion on looks. The purpose of making men discredit women's advice, as Waffles is attempting to do here, is to lend further value to looksmax gurus. It's rather shameless advice to give if you monetize this as a service by stigmatizing free and relevant counsel for ideological and pseudoscientific metricizing of appearance. Look, women don't think in a hive mind any more than men do, and there is no women's conspiracy to hide men from the truth of any sort. 85. Rejection is a necessary step into manhood as it helps men become self-conscious. When men get rejected by women, they either improve upon the factors that cause that rejection, such as learning to drive, or going to the gym, or washing themselves, or they become embittered and misogynistic by refusing to change themselves. 86. Personality matters because it is evergreen. Nice guys always expect something for being nice, and that is why they are seen as either pathetic or creepy by women. If they can show a capacity to be kind or generous without reward or expectation, they become far more attractive. 87. Both genders practice hypergamy and hypogamy. Take Taylor Swift, for example, when she practiced hypogamy by dating Joe Alwyn for 7 years, despite her being richer and more famous. The inverse of Joe Alwyn dating Taylor Swift is an example of hypergamy. 88. This claim is based off a photograph without any context. 89. 89 is a contradiction as to what Waffles was saying earlier, since he was implying that women only practice hypergamy, whereas now he has an excuse for those who do practice hypogamy, painting them as narcissists and controllers. 90. Intimacy should only ever occur if both parties are mutual. Men in relationships don't always seek intimacy from women all the time. 91. Belief 91 is a contradiction of 15. 92. In the West, polygamy is not on the rise, it is illegal. 93. Not all women can or want to engage in intimacy 24/7. 94. Belief 94 is a lazy repetition of 3 and 4. 95. Crazy standards are subjective. Standards are set by the individual. Rejection, as stated before, is healthy. It allows for good men to become better versions of themselves and allows for women to find those better men. Having standards is only crazy if they are inordinately disproportionate to your own standards for yourself. 96. This only applies to women who've had bad relationships in the past, implying that it's the exact same women saying this after rejecting men in their 20s is a very bold statement to make. One would expect an example to be supplied of a woman saying this, but of course none are. Why? Because these women are straw men. 97. Not everyone wants a satellite friend. No self-respecting individual would orbit another without getting any closer. The women have nothing to gain from telling a friend to stop orbiting them if they pose no danger to their person, so why would they? However, some women may dislike the idea of a vulture circling them if they are in a relationship and have reason to assume that they have ulterior motive. 98. Belief 98 is a contradiction of 15. 99. Men simp regardless of the media. OnlyFans, for example, was not intended to be a pornographic site. However, human nature turned it into what it is today. 100. Belief 100 can only be concluded by the terminally online. To summarize, 3% of Waffles' BlackPill beliefs are worth following. Those are 16, 23, and 64. 12% of his video is just padding or filler, and 85% of his video are full of beliefs that are either fabricated, flawed, or hyperbolic. I therefore conclude that you should probably not take his advice very seriously. Thank you for watching this analysis. If you have any questions or would like to add something, feel free to do so down below. Share this to any friend who you believe is falling into the grasp of the black pill, and until then, I shall see you. Take care.